So, guys, I want to talk about AEW, and unfortunately, I didn't watch all of the show, but there's definitely some ups and downs to the show. That first of all, I'm happy that they announced like a couple of matches for AEW All Out. Like we're getting Adam Copeland and Christian Cage versus FDR. That's going to make the Toronto crowd very happy. And they also announced that's going to be Moxley versus Darby. They have 3 weeks to the show. I'm happy with AEW announcing some matches. And there is a criticism, and I do agree with it, that a lot of people are talking about like how they went from 19,000 people at Forbidden Door to now they're at an arena with 900 people, and it doesn't feel as loud really, or it's kind of like like it's kind of like a downgrade really. And I think with AEW they have to just really get to that level of WWE where they can draw shows that are like between that's like I think 10,000 minimum should be like a weekly show. And I kind of wonder how they are, going to achieve that, because the other issue is that when you do something like when you are in smaller venues, you get kind of complacent and then you're like, hey, you know what? I'm afraid to try bigger venues. And I do think that really they need to find like maybe more like the 5,000 to 8,000 seat venues and work on just selling those out. Like ultimately, you have to work yourself upwards, because I think they're working themselves downwards a little too much. Like yes, they were in really really big arenas. It was kind of really like what's the word? It was kind of like a situation where not a lot of people are showing up, so they downgraded. But it seems like they're doing way too many downgrades. And I also understand that the ECW arena has a lot of history to it, so there is a sense of just hey, I've been there, or the fans who were not alive, or they were too young to watch ECW as kids, or they had like really strict parents, can go to the ECW arena and try to get some of that. So it opens up with FDR coming out to the ring. They do their dumb comedy, and they just blame the referee for not getting a for like losing the match, because they blame the referee for not counting, for doing a 3 count on the wrong person. And it's just like with FTR, they're bad on the microphone. They joke around too much. Then you have Adam Copeland, Christian Cage. They joke around a little too much. But Adam Copeland has a lot of charisma, so that usually gets overlooked. And it leads to a match, really. And like I said, I'm happy with that, because a lot of times with AEW, what do they always do? They announce a lot of matches, a week before the show or whatever. And then the other thing is that after this, you had a segment with Darby Allin, and he did something where he was like painting with his blood, and then he also just like set it on fire, really, and set the painting on fire, really. So it's definitely kind of really just disturbing. Reminds me a lot of Sweeney Todd, or it reminds me of the movie All That Jazz, where the guy overworks himself, so he takes his bloody bandaged head and he's wiping it on a wall, really. So it's kind of like that thing too, and it's also like fake blood. So I just don't. It felt more cinematic when Darby Allin's more of a gritty wrestler, and it felt like it was just there to be disturbing, really. Like again, I like the TV-14 element of this, but it doesn't really get over. And then sometimes when you do stuff like this, you need to have like the Death Riders in the ring. They have their match, and then you play this, and then they're reacting to it, because it kind of gets to a point of, how should I kind of say this? Like getting over with the audience, or Mox is reacting to this like psychotic guy doing shit like this. Like that was the best way to say it, really. They had like an 8-man match with. They had another match, and it was like an 8-man match. It was like the Don Callis family versus Jet Speed and Brodito. There was like a match before that, but like I think it was Dan Garcia and John Moxley. I watched a little bit of it. Dan Garcia got some like 2 counts, and I do agree that he is missing something. Like I'm not sure if he's going to be a big star really, but I think he's one of those people like he needs to experiment, like maybe become heel really, or just try to just he needs to have some edge to him. And I think like that underdog element was good. I think like him and QT Mart, him and like that guy's Daddy Magic should get into a feud, because with Daddy Magic, he has a great voice. He sounds a lot like Joaquin Phoenix. So I think like him and and Daddy Magic should become a team, like and like really should try to be in the microphone and have emotions really, because I think they both have good emotions, but they don't like put that on screen really. If they did that, I think they'll be way more popular. You did a match between like I think it was like Ricochet, and then I also watched that match with Brodito and Jet Speed versus Don Callis family. I'm happy Josh Alexander won because he loses way too much. He's a big, strong, beefy guy. He's like, you took the blood of Kurt Angle. No, you took Kurt Angle, Ryback, you hit them with polymerization, you get Josh Alexander. There's some dysfunction between Okada and Takeshita that could lead to another match or whatever, really. And then Don Callis was saying something about, you know, with to Hangman later on that his family wants all the titles really. So I do think that Okada should be the number one contender because like he took out Swerve. Swerve is his friend. Swerve is the friend of Will Ospreay and Hangman. Makes sense for them to have a match. Okada has been holding a lot of titles. He's been doing a lot of great things. You guys are going to have like a Dave Meltzer type of match. He's the right person. And I can even see something where maybe Takeshita screws him over or he comes short and Takeshita rubs it in his face. They get into a fight and then Don Callis is like, okay, you guys got to settle your issue at Wrestle Dream. Like there's ways to get to Takeshita versus Okada because I believe that's where the money's at. Or you can do something like you can have a number one contendership match, Okada versus Omega. They have a match, and then you have Okada lose, and then do Omega versus Hangman. But I think that if villain versus heel is good, Okada. I think we're at the point where Okada should rightfully be a champion. I mean, rightfully face the heavyweight champion. And I think Omega versus Takeshita could be something. And I think that's the right match to have, really. And I also will say that after that, you had the Gates of Agony and Ricochet versus versus another team. No, versus the Ops, really. I don't remember a lot from that match, but what happened was the Hurt Syndicate decide to cause Ricochet the loss, really. So when that happened, really, I was okay with that because when you look at Toliola and Bishop Khan, even though they lose a lot, they're big, beefy guys, really. So, and you've kind of built them up a little bit better over the past couple of weeks. So it makes sense for Bobby Lashley and Shelton to rival these guys because obviously, if they're gonna have matches with other people, they really need to get to a point of saying, okay, you know what? Gates of Agony makes sense. They're big people. People like Jet Speed are smaller people. It doesn't make sense. Nick Wayne, Kip Sabian versus the Hurt Syndicate. You can't have a 50-50 match. You have to get to pick which matches they should be 50-50 with. And that's really all that I watched of it. I think that there was a segment with Mark Briscoe. He had another kid. I hate to be an asshole, but Mark Briscoe, I think he has like 10 or 12 children. He really needs to stop doing that, really, because, it's to a point where it's like, dude, 10, 12, 13 children, that's too much. And then the other thing, too, is that you have to kind of question, the future of AEW. So what would happen if and he's also like the Mick Foley of AEW. So what would happen if he injures and he can't work anymore? Or what would happen if AEW closes and he has like 13, 14 kids to feed, really, on maybe $100,000 a year and then not having that $100,000, really. So, I mean, congratulations to him, but, like, you got to really say, what, enough is enough, really, and I hate being an asshole, but 13, 14 kids is way too much for any person, in my opinion, really, but, what the fuck do I know? They had a segment with Mercedes Moné, and she wore, like, an inflatable suit, or she had, like, kind of an outfit that was a little weird, and a lot of people were saying that's just to celebrate her 9 titles, and I think trying to set up Alex Windsor versus Mercedes, which I don't have a problem with, like, Windsor... She's been having matches. She's been doing a great job. So let's kind of do something with this, And then also, Will Ospreay's not there anymore. So definitely her missing her husband and her husband being out and all the other stuff, definitely, the power of love, when he's not around, really. That could be a storyline, and that's where they need to go with her. And I like how maybe when he comes back, she actually wins the title, really. But there's some storytelling that you can do with this. I believe, if I'm correct, they had a segment between the women. They had the women like fight each other because I think they're teasing like blood and guts with just women only, really, and I want to see that for All Out really badly. If they really want something to hook the show, really, that would be it, really. So I just think that, like I said, like it is what it is, really. And then there was also like a segment with MJF, and MJF was talking on the microphone. And he was not talking on the microphone. He was just really talking like back on the video prompt, and people just don't like that because it's almost like you got paid, be here, do something like that. And then also too, there was Darby Allin versus Claudio. That was a really great match. Claudio throws a shopping cart with Darby Allin in it, shows how strong he is. They throws Darby Allin to chairs. Darby Allin climbs like a pillar. Really, really great shit, really. And I believe Darby Allin beats him, so that's always controversial because you have the big, strong guy losing to the high school freshman type of thing, really. But it was really good. And then also, it wasn't as crazy as an ECW match because, as I said, I think All Out should have Blood and Guts women's match. That should be where they do that. And I think that's going to do a lot, really. But you don't really get that match over if you do something like have like a bunch of weeks of hardcore stuff in Philadelphia, really. Because if you do that, it kind of diminishes. Mark Briscoe is interested in challenging MJF and also challenging Kyle Fletcher. So, Kyle Fletcher versus Mark Briscoe, because they're both like vicious wrestlers and they're very brutal. That could be something, really. So, overall, some really good directions for All Out. Keep announcing matches. You probably have 6 or 7 shows before All Out. Treat it like a big fucking deal, and you'll have something, really. But definitely Women's Blood and Guts, having some major shit, rivaling the WWE, acting like this is a big deal. That's all going to lead AEW to greatness, Just like last year when they burned down Swerve's house. Like, imagine if WWE had a show during All Out weekend last year and they burned down Swerve's house. That would have been something where AEW would have kicked their asses, really. So hopefully this year they have something compelling and great. And I also hope that as Swerve's not there, as Ospreay's not there, they really build their next generation. Like I said, Chris Jericho versus Anthony Bowen should happen, or Chris Jericho versus Omega. Like, it would give Chris Jericho a match before he goes back to WWE. And I'm gonna post a video afterwards on what I feel should be great AEW matches for All Out.